My situationship told me I was just a friend after 6 months of sleeping together, just so he could ask me to watch him with another woman. I should have known something was wrong when he kissed me goodbye that morning and said he had something important to tell me later. 6 months of what I thought was a relationship. 6 months of sleeping in his bed 3 nights a week. 6 months of inside jokes and shared dinners and his hand finding mine in crowded spaces. I was stupid enough to think the important thing might be him finally saying those 3 words, or maybe asking me to move in. Instead, what I got was this. Him sitting across from me at breakfast, casual as anything, telling me he was meeting a woman his parents picked out for him that afternoon. Wait, what? I remember my fork just hovering there midway to my mouth. He shrugged, buttering his toast like he was discussing the weather. Yeah, my parents have been on my case about settling down. They found someone they think would be a good match. I'm meeting her for coffee at 3. The thing that gets me, looking back, is how calm I tried to stay. How I set my fork down carefully and asked, voice barely shaking, "And what am I exactly in all of this?" That's when he looked genuinely confused. "You're my best friend, obviously. Why are you being weird about this?" Best friend. 6 months of intimacy reduced to best friend. I felt something crack inside my chest, but I kept my face neutral. Right. Your best friend. The one who sleeps in your bed and keeps a toothbrush in your bathroom. Well, yeah, he said. And I swear to God, he looked relieved that I understood. That's different, though. This is about finding someone serious, someone to build a future with. I should have walked out then. Should have thrown my coffee in his face, or at least told him exactly what I thought of him. Instead, I just sat there, numb, while he kept talking about this woman, about how his parents were excited, about how it was time he got serious about his life plans. And then came the real kicker. "Actually," he said, eyes lighting up like he'd just had the best idea ever, "you should come with me. To the coffee thing. It might make her more comfortable, you know? Having another woman there. Plus, she'll see I have female friends, that I'm normal." The laugh that came out of me sounded wrong even to my own ears. "You want me to come watch you court another woman?" "It's not courting, it's just coffee." He reached across and squeezed my hand. The same hand he'd held while we fell asleep last night. "Come on, as a favor. For me." And God help me, I said yes. I don't know why. Maybe I was still in shock. Maybe some part of me thought if I went along with it, proved how cool and understanding I was, he'd realize what he was throwing away. Maybe I was just too broken in that moment to fight. The coffee shop he chose was one we'd been to together at least a dozen times. The barista recognized us, gave me that little smile she always did when we walked in. I wondered if she thought we were a couple. I wondered if I'd been the only one who thought that. His date showed up exactly on time, because of course she did. She was beautiful in that effortless way some women manage, with perfect posture and a confident handshake. She looked at me with polite interest when he introduced me as his best friend, and I watched her eyes do a quick scan, trying to figure out if I was a threat. I wanted to tell her to run, that this man was capable of sleeping next to someone for 6 months without ever considering them a real person. We sat down, ordered drinks, made small talk. She was nice, actually. Worked in finance, had 2 cats, liked hiking. Every time she said something interesting, he'd lean forward and engage fully, asking follow-up questions, laughing at her jokes. I'd seen him like this before, except I'd thought he was like this with me because he cared. Turns out he was just good at performing interest. About 20 minutes in, she complimented my bracelet. It was a delicate silver thing my grandmother had given me before she died, one I wore every single day. I smiled and thanked her, told her the story about my grandmother, how she'd worn it on her wedding day. That's when he cut in. "Oh, you should probably take that off, actually." He was looking at me, but talking to her. "I don't want her to get the wrong idea. Like we're together or something." The silence that followed was the kind that rings in your ears. She looked uncomfortable, glancing between us. I felt every eye in the coffee shop turn toward our table, even though rationally I knew that wasn't true. "Take it off," I repeated flatly. "Just while we're here," he said, like this was reasonable. I don't want any confusion about our relationship. Something in me finally snapped. Not dramatically, not with a scene, just a quiet, cold clarity settling over everything. I looked at this man I'd given 6 months of my life to. This man who'd held me while I cried about my grandmother's death, who'd worn me like a comfortable sweater but never actually seen me as a person. And I understood, finally, what I'd been to him. I stood up, carefully removed the bracelet, and set it on the table in front of him. Not in front of her, in front of him. "Here," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Keep it, since apparently I wore it for you and not for myself." "What are you doing?" He looked genuinely baffled. "It's just a bracelet." "Yeah," I said. "It's just a bracelet. And I'm just your best friend. And this is just coffee." I grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair. "Enjoy your life, both of you." I walked out before either of them could respond. Made it 3 blocks before my hands started shaking. Then I stopped, turned around, and marched back into that coffee shop. Without a word to either of them, I picked up my grandmother's bracelet from the table, slipped it back on my wrist where it belonged, and left again. This time for good. 5 blocks later, I realized I had no idea where I was going. I just kept walking, letting my feet carry me through neighborhoods I barely recognized, past stores and parks and people living their normal lives. Eventually, I found myself standing outside a small cafe I'd never been to before. One of those local places with mismatched furniture and art by community members on the walls. I went in, ordered something I didn't really want, and sat in the corner booth trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do now. I have a boyfriend, I'd told someone earlier that week. A coworker had asked if I was single, and I'd said those words automatically. I have a boyfriend. Except I didn't. I never had. I'd had a man who enjoyed my company and my body without ever once considering me his partner. I was so lost in my thoughts, I didn't notice someone approach my table until a voice said, "I'm sorry, I don't mean to intrude, but are you okay?" I looked up and almost didn't recognize him at first. Then it clicked. River? I hadn't seen him in 4 years, not since we'd both been part of that contemporary dance company that folded due to lack of funding. "I thought that was you," he said, smiling, but the smile faded when he got a better look at my face. "You look like you're having the day from hell." I laughed, and it came out slightly unhinged. "Is it that obvious?" "I'm pretty good at reading people." He gestured to the empty seat across from me. "Mind if I sit? You don't have to talk about it, but you probably shouldn't be alone right now." I should have said no. Should have protected my pride. Pretended I was fine. Instead, I nodded, and he slid into the booth across from me. We sat in silence for a moment, and somehow it wasn't awkward. Just present. "I just found out I've been living in a completely different reality than the person I thought I was dating," I finally said. 6 months. 6 months of thinking I was someone's girlfriend, and it turns out I was just convenient. River didn't immediately try to fix it or tell me it would be okay. He just nodded slowly, like he was really hearing me. That's brutal. The worst part is I can't even be properly angry yet. I'm just confused, like I missed some crucial memo about what we were doing. "Maybe he missed the memo," River said quietly, "about how to be a decent human being." That got a real laugh out of me. Wet and a little broken, but real. We talked for 2 hours. He told me he'd moved back to the city about a year ago, that he was teaching dance at a community center and working part-time at his brother's restaurant. Then, carefully, like he was handling something fragile, he told me his wife had died 3 years ago. Cancer. She'd been 29. "I've got a daughter," he said, pulling up a photo on his phone. A little girl with dark curls and a gap-toothed grin, maybe 5 years old. "Mira. She's the reason I keep going most days." "She's beautiful," I said, and meant it. "She is." He put the phone away. "Look, I'm not trying to compare pain or anything, but I get that feeling of your entire reality shifting. Of waking up one day and realizing the life you thought you were living doesn't exist anymore. For some reason, that honesty, that lack of trying to fix me or minimize what I was feeling, made me feel more seen than I had in months. Maybe years." By the time we finally left the cafe, the sun was setting. River walked me to the subway station, and before I headed down the steps, he pulled out his phone. "Look, I know today was awful for you, but if you ever want to talk, or not talk, or just sit in a cafe and exist for a while." He held out his phone. "Trade numbers?" I put my number in. As I handed it back, he said, "For what it's worth, anyone who treated you like that is an idiot." I rode the subway home with my bare wrist, and something that might have been hope starting to unfurl in my chest. My parents called 2 days later with news that changed everything, though I didn't know it yet. They were retiring and had decided to move to Iteria, a small coastal town about 3 hours north. My dad had always wanted to live by the ocean, and my mom had found the perfect house. They were excited, talking over each other on the phone, and then my mom said something that stopped me cold. "We were thinking, with the house being as big as it is, maybe you'd want to come with us for a while. Just until you figure out your next move. You've been talking about wanting a change." I had been talking about that. Vaguely, in the abstract way people talk about dreams they don't actually pursue. But now, sitting in my tiny apartment that suddenly felt suffocating, I thought about my so-called best friend, about running into him at all our usual places, about trying to rebuild a life in a city full of memories I no longer wanted. "Yes," I heard myself say. "I'll come." My mom sounded surprised. "Really? You don't need time to think about it?" "No." I looked around my apartment, at the life I'd built that had turned out to be made of paper. "I'm sure. When do we leave?" The next 3 weeks were a blur of packing, giving notice at my job, saying goodbye to the few friends I'd somehow neglected while being someone's unacknowledged girlfriend. River and I texted occasionally. Nothing heavy, just check-ins. He sent me photos of Mira's dance class. I sent him pictures of the chaos that was my packing process. The day before I left, he asked if he could take me out for coffee. We met at a different place this time, a bright modern space with too much natural light and excellent espresso. He looked nervous, which was strange. River was always calm, measured. "I have something weird to tell you," he started, "and I don't want you to think I'm some kind of stalker." "That's definitely a concerning opening," I said. But I was smiling. "I'm moving to Eteria too," I blinked. "What?" "My brother's opening a restaurant there. He's been planning it for 2 years, and he wants me to help manage it. The original plan was for me to move out there this summer, but he's moved the timeline up. We're relocating in about 6 weeks. I didn't know what it was. Coincidence? Fate? Neither of us believed in fate. "I know," he said quickly. "I know how this sounds, but I swear I made this plan before I ran into you, before I knew you were moving there. My brother signed the lease on the restaurant space 4 months ago." "I believe you," I said, and I did. River wasn't the type to lie. "That's actually kind of amazing. It'll be nice to know someone there." Relief flooded his face. "Yeah?" "Yeah," I smiled. "Mira can come visit once you're settled. I'll probably need reminders that small humans exist so I don't turn into a complete hermit." We exchanged email addresses, promised to stay in touch, and said goodbye with a hug that lasted just a beat too long. The move to Eteria was easier than I expected, probably because I threw myself into it completely. The house my parents bought was beautiful. An old craftsman with a wraparound porch and an attic room they immediately designated as mine. The town itself was small, the kind of place where people knew each other and strangers stood out, but not in an unfriendly way. Everyone was just curious. I spent the first 2 weeks helping my parents settle in, unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, learning the layout of the downtown area. The ocean was a 10-minute walk from the house, and I got into the habit of going there early in the morning, watching the sunrise while drinking terrible gas station coffee. It was during one of these walks that I saw the community center. Small brick building, slightly worn around the edges, with a bulletin board out front covered in flyers. One caught my eye. "Youth dance program needs instructors. Experience required. Contact inside." I hadn't really danced, in years. After the company folded, I'd told myself I'd find another gig, but then life got in the way. Work. That relationship that wasn't a relationship. Excuses. Before I could talk myself out of it, I walked inside. A woman in her 50s with bright eyes and an energetic presence looked up from behind the desk. "Can I help you?" she asked warmly. "I saw the flyer about the dance instructor position," I said. "Oh, wonderful. I'm Patricia, the director here." She came around the desk, shaking my hand with genuine enthusiasm. "Tell me about your background." I told her about my experience with the contemporary dance company, showed her some videos on my phone from my performing days. She watched intently, nodding along, and after the 3rd video, she smiled. "When can you start?" "Classes start in 3 weeks," she said. "We have about 15 kids signed up so far, ages 5 to 12. Can you handle that range?" "Absolutely," I said, even though my heart was pounding. Could I? It had been so long. "Great." Patricia shook my hand firmly. "We meet Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 to 6. Pay isn't amazing, but the kids are wonderful." Walking home, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose, maybe. Or just possibility. The future had opened up in a way it hadn't been able to when I was stuck in my old life. River texted me the next day. He and Mira were officially moved in, living in an apartment above his brother's restaurant while they renovated the space. He asked if I wanted to grab coffee, and this time when we met up, it felt different. Less like 2 people who'd run into each other by accident. More like 2 people intentionally choosing to spend time together. Mira was with him, shy at first but warming up quickly when I asked about her favorite things. She loved unicorns, the color purple, and dancing, though she was quick to tell me she wasn't very good at it. "I bet you're better than you think," I told her. "I'm actually going to be teaching dance at the community center. You should come to a class." Her eyes went wide. "Really? Really?" I looked at River. "If that's okay with your dad." "That would be amazing," he said, and something in his expression made my chest feel warm. She's been begging me to let her take lessons. We fell into an easy pattern after that. Coffee once a week, sometimes with Mira, sometimes without. We'd talk about everything and nothing, about dance and food and loss and new beginnings. He never pushed, never made me feel like there was an agenda. We were just 2 people who'd found each other at the right time. The dance classes started, and I fell in love with teaching immediately. The kids were unfiltered, hilarious, and surprisingly dedicated. Mira was in the younger group, and watching her face light up when she nailed a simple combination made something inside me heal a little. After the 3rd class, she ran up to me with that uninhibited joy only small children manage. "Did you see?" Did you see me do the turns? I saw, I said, crouching down to her level. You were amazing. Can I hug you? Of course. She wrapped her small arms around my neck, and over her shoulder, I caught River watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Soft, vulnerable, like he was seeing something he'd been afraid to hope for. Life settled into a rhythm. I taught classes, helped my parents with house projects, walked along the ocean, had coffee with River. It was simple, uncomplicated, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt like I was actually living my life instead of waiting for it to start. And then, on a random Tuesday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find him standing there. My ex. The man who'd never been my boyfriend. He looked tired, rumpled, like he'd driven straight through from the city without stopping. Hi, he said. I just stared at him, my hand still on the doorknob, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. Can I come in? He asked. I need to talk to you. Finding my voice took effort. How did you know where I was? Your friend Jessica told me. Look, I know you probably don't want to see me, but I drove 3 hours to get here. Can we talk? Please? Every instinct told me to slam the door in his face. But I'd been raised to be polite, to give people chances, so I stepped aside and let him in. Biggest mistake I'd made in weeks. He walked into my living room like he belonged there, looking around at my parents' house with barely concealed judgment. So this is where you've been hiding. I'm not hiding, I said, staying near the door, not offering him a seat. I moved. There's a difference. Right. Moved. He turned to face me. Look, I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. About what happened. There was no us, I interrupted. You made that very clear. That's what I wanted to explain. He ran a hand through his hair. That gesture I used to find endearing, and now just found manipulative. I think I was scared. Of commitment. Of what we had. I convinced myself it wasn't real because real meant I had to make a choice, and I wasn't ready. I crossed my arms. And you drove 3 hours to tell me this, why? Because I want another chance. He stepped closer, and I stepped back. I ended things with that woman my parents set me up with. Told them I couldn't go through with it because I couldn't stop thinking about you. About us. There was no us. I repeated, louder this time. You can't end something that never existed. But it did exist, he insisted. 6 months of us together, that wasn't nothing. You're right, it wasn't nothing. It was me deluding myself into thinking I mattered to you while you treated me like a convenience. I felt anger rising, hot and clean. You humiliated me. You made me take off my grandmother's bracelet so your date wouldn't get confused about whether you actually cared about me. I was an idiot, he said. I know that now. I'm sorry. You're sorry. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're sorry you didn't lock me down before I got away. You're sorry you can't find someone else who will put up with your emotional unavailability. That's what you're sorry about. His face hardened. That's not fair. Fair? My voice cracked. You want to talk about fair? You slept in my bed for 6 months and never once called me your girlfriend. You let me build a life around you while never considering me part of yours. You asked me to watch you date another woman. Where was fair in any of that? I came here to fix this, he said. And now he was angry too. I'm trying to tell you I was wrong. That I want to make this right. You can't make it right. I walked to the door, opened it, because making it right would require you to have actually cared about me in the first place. And we both know you didn't. You cared about having someone around. About not being alone. But you never actually cared about me. That's not true. Then tell me something about me, I challenged. Something real. Not surface-level stuff anyone could know. Tell me what I'm afraid of. Tell me what I want out of life. Tell me my dreams. He opened his mouth, closed it. Opened it again. I know you like dance. Everyone knows that. Try again. He couldn't. He stood there searching for something to say, and the silence was answer enough. I pulled my grandmother's bracelet from my pocket. I'd been carrying it around for weeks, unable to decide what to do with it. Now I knew. I held it out to him. What are you doing? He asked. Giving you what you wanted. I took his hand, pressed the bracelet into his palm, closed his fingers around it. You wanted me to take it off, to not wear it around you. So here, keep it. It's yours now. I don't want your bracelet, and I don't want you. I stepped back, still holding the door open. I don't want the half-love you're offering. I don't want to be someone's second choice after their parents' pick didn't work out. I don't want to spend my life wondering if I'm enough for someone who's never going to see me. You're being dramatic, he said, but his voice was uncertain. I'm being honest. Maybe for the first time. I gestured to the open door. You need to leave now. He looked at me for a long moment like he was waiting for me to crack, to take it all back. When I didn't, he walked to the door, stopped. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret, I said quietly, is not doing this 6 months ago. He left without another word. I closed the door, locked it. and stood there for a long moment with my bare wrist and my pounding heart. Then I walked upstairs to my room, pulled out my phone, and texted River. "Are you free? I could really use a friend right now." His response came immediately. "Always. Coffee place in 20? I met him at our usual spot, and the moment he saw my face, he ordered us both tea instead of coffee and guided me to the back corner booth. I told him everything. The doorbell, the conversation, the bracelet, how I'd finally said all the things I should have said months ago. "I'm proud of you," he said when I finished. I gave a watery laugh. "For what? Finally standing up for myself when it's way too late to matter? For standing up for yourself at all?" He reached across the table, squeezed my hand once, then pulled back. "A lot of people never get there." It didn't feel triumphant, I admitted. It just felt sad, like mourning something that never really existed. "That's the hardest kind of grief," River said. "Missing something you never actually had." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the other customers come and go. Finally, River said, "Mira's been asking when you're coming over for dinner. Has she?" "Every single day." He smiled. "She's decided you're her favorite person. Fair warning. I'd love to come to dinner," I said. "When? Friday? My brother's testing some new recipes for the restaurant. We'll be guinea pigs." Perfect. Friday came, and I showed up at River's apartment with a bottle of wine and nerves I couldn't quite explain. His brother answered the door, a tall man with River's eyes and a warmer smile. "You must be the dance teacher Mira won't stop talking about," he said. "I'm Phoenix. Nice to meet you." I handed him the wine. "Thanks for having me." The apartment was small but warmly decorated, clearly designed to be child-friendly. Mira ran out of her room the moment she heard my voice, launching into a detailed explanation of the dance move she'd been practicing. I followed her to the living room, where she demonstrated her technique while I offered gentle corrections. River watched from the kitchen doorway, and when our eyes met, he was smiling in that soft way that made my chest ache with something that wasn't quite pain. Dinner was chaotic and lovely. Phoenix's cooking was incredible, and Mira kept us all entertained with her running commentary on everything. After we ate, River put her to bed while Phoenix and I cleaned up. He was easy to talk to, asking about my dance background, sharing stories about growing up with River. "He's been different since you moved here," Phoenix said casually while loading the dishwasher. "Lighter. I haven't seen him like this since before." He didn't finish, but he didn't need to. I knew what he meant. When River came back out, Phoenix announced he had to get back to the restaurant for a late-night delivery. He left with a meaningful look at his brother that I pretended not to notice. "Want to sit on the porch?" River asked. "It's nice out." We sat on the small balcony overlooking the street, passing a blanket back and forth as the temperature dropped. We talked about nothing important, just the easy kind of conversation that happens between people who understand each other. "Can I ask you something?" River said eventually. "Sure. That guy who came to your house, did you love him?" I thought about it carefully. I thought I did. But I think what I actually loved was the idea of being loved, of mattering to someone. He was just there. River nodded slowly. "I get that. Do you?" "Yeah." He looked out at the street, not at me. After my wife died, I had so many people tell me I'd love again. Like love was just this thing that would happen to me whether I wanted it or not. But the truth is, I was terrified of it. Terrified of losing someone again. "Are you still terrified?" I asked quietly. He finally looked at me, less so than I was. Something passed between us in that moment, something unspoken but acknowledged. We weren't ready to name it yet, but it was there, growing slowly in the space between us. We sat there for another hour, talking and not talking, until I finally said I should get home. River walked me to my car, and before I got in, he said, "I'm glad you moved here." "Me too," I said, and meant it more than I'd meant anything in a long time. The weeks after that dinner shifted something between us. We still met for coffee, but now there were also impromptu texts, photos of silly things we'd seen, inside jokes developing. Mira started requesting that I come to dinner more often, and I always said yes. One evening after a particularly good dance class, I decided to do something I'd been avoiding. I pulled out all the letters I'd written to my ex over the 6 months we were together. Letters I'd never sent, where I'd poured out my feelings and hopes and dreams. I'd found them packed in a box when I was moving, and I'd been carrying them around like an anchor. I built a small fire in my parents' fire pit, sat down in front of it, and started feeding the letters to the flames. One by one, watching my words curl and blacken and disappear. It felt ritualistic, important. I was halfway through the stack when I heard a car pull up. River's voice called out, "Your mom said you were back here." I looked up to find him walking around the side of the house carrying a paper bag. "Hey." He took in the scene, the fire, the letters in my hand, and understanding crossed his face. "Want company? Or should I go?" "Company's good," I said. He sat down next to me, close enough that our shoulders were almost touching, and pulled out the contents of the bag. Fresh bread from his brother's restaurant. Still warm. My mom came by the restaurant today. She made too much, as always. Thought you might want some. We sat there for a while, him pulling apart bread and handing me pieces, me feeding letters to the fire. He didn't ask about them, didn't try to make me explain. He was just there. When the last letter burned away, I turned to him and found him already looking at me. The firelight made shadows dance across his face, and I could see every year of grief and healing written there. "Thank you," I said, "for being here. Where else would I be?" He said simply, and then slowly, carefully, like we were both terrified of breaking something precious, he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't dramatic or passionate or any of those things romance novels promise. It was gentle and questioning and honest. It tasted like bread and smoke and possibility. When we pulled apart, we stayed close, foreheads almost touching. "I've wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted quietly. "Why didn't you?" "Because I wanted to be sure that you were ready, that I was ready." He pulled back slightly to look at me properly. "I'm not going to be your rebound. I can't be that. River, you're not anything like him. You're honest and present and real." "Like what?" "Like I hate the smell of vanilla candles but love vanilla ice cream. Like I can't watch sad movies without crying for hours afterward. Like I'm terrified of being invisible again." I took a breath. "Like I'm scared of this. Of us. Because what if I'm wrong again?" "You're not wrong," he said. "But I'm scared too. Scared of losing someone again. Scared of putting Mira through that. Scared that I'm ready for this when I thought I'd never be ready for anything again." We sat with those fears for a moment, letting them exist between us without trying to fix them. "So what do?" I finally asked. "We try," he said. "Carefully, honestly. No games, no pretending to be something we're not. We just try." I kissed him again, and this time it was me initiating, me choosing. When we pulled apart, he was smiling. "Your mom's probably watching us from the window," he said. "Definitely," I agreed. "She's been not so subtly asking about you for weeks." "Good. Means I don't have to worry about her disapproving." We stayed by the fire until it burned down to embers, talking about everything and nothing, making no grand promises but not needing to. This was different from before. This was real. Over the next few weeks, River and I settled into being together. Not in the rushed, intense way of new couples, but in a slower, more intentional way. We had date nights, but we also had normal nights where I'd go over and help Mira with her dance homework while he cooked dinner. We held hands walking down the street. We kissed goodnight, but didn't rush into anything more. It was during one of these ordinary evenings, about a month after the fire pit, while I was showing Mira how to properly point her toes, that River asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Do you ever regret it? Moving here?" I looked up from where I was crouched next to Mira. Not even for a second. "Why?" "I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if you feel like you ran away, if you miss your old life." "The only thing I miss from my old life," I said carefully, aware that Mira was listening even though she was pretending not to, "is the version of me who believed she deserved crumbs. I don't miss that girl at all." He smiled at that, but there was still something uncertain in his expression. Later, after Mira was asleep and we were sitting on the porch again, he circled back to it. "I worry sometimes that I'm not enough," he admitted. "That you'll wake up and realize you settled for the sad widower with the kid and the tiny apartment above a restaurant." I turned to face him fully. "River, you're not a consolation prize. You're not some safe option I chose because I was hurt. You're the first person who's made me feel like an actual priority. But what if—" "No," I interrupted. "We can't live in what-ifs. I spent 6 months in a what-if with someone who never saw me. I'm not doing that again. So if you want to do this, actually do this, we have to trust each other. Trust that I'm here because I want to be. Trust that you're worth being here for." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and took my hand, threading his fingers through mine. "Okay. Okay? Okay, I trust you." He squeezed my hand. "And I want to do this. Actually do it." "Good," I said, "because I'm not going anywhere." But despite that conversation, something started to shift in me. Not doubt about River, exactly, but doubt about myself. I started second-guessing everything. When he texted, I'd analyze every word. When we made plans, I'd worry I was being too eager or not eager enough. The old fears came creeping back. What if I was doing it again? What if I was seeing something that wasn't there? It got worse after I ran into a woman at the grocery store who'd known River's wife. She introduced herself as a former neighbor, someone who'd lived on their street before River moved. She'd been kind, asking how I was enjoying Eteria, mentioning that she'd heard River and I were seeing each other. Then, almost as an afterthought, she was such a special person, one of those people who lights up every room. I'm sure you've heard all about her. I had. Some. River talked about his wife honestly, but not obsessively. He'd made it clear she was part of his past, not a competition for his present. But standing there in the cereal aisle, I suddenly felt like I was auditioning for a role someone else had already perfected. I started canceling plans. Nothing obvious at first, just small things. I was tired, I had a headache. My parents needed help with something. River never pushed, just accepted my excuses with gentle understanding that somehow made me feel worse. The dance classes became my only refuge. There I could lose myself in movement and music, and the uncomplicated joy of the kids. Mira still ran up to hug me after every class, but I could see her starting to sense something was wrong. One Thursday after class, she asked, "Are you sad?" I crouched down to her level. "Why do you ask that? You don't smile as much anymore." She said it matter-of-factly, the way kids do. Like you're here, but also not here. She was right. I'd been going through the motions, teaching the moves, but not really connecting. The realization hit me hard. "You're very observant," I told her. "My dad says that too." She tilted her head, studying me. "He's sad too, I think. Did you guys have a fight?" "No, honey. We didn't fight." "Then why are you both sad?" I didn't have an answer for her. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that sometimes people sabotage their own happiness because they're terrified of losing it? That night, I sat in my room staring at my phone, River's last text message glowing on the screen. It was from 3 days ago. "Miss you. Let me know when you're free." I'd read it at least 50 times without responding. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, but I couldn't make myself type. What was I supposed to say? Sorry I'm being weird and distant and probably proving you right about being not ready for this? Instead, I pulled on my jacket and walked to the beach. It was late, nearly midnight, and the ocean was loud in the darkness. I stood at the water's edge and tried to figure out what I was so afraid of. The answer, when it came, was both simple and terrible. I was afraid of being happy, because every time I'd been happy before, it had been ripped away. The dance company folding, my grandmother dying, the relationship that wasn't a relationship. I'd learned that happiness was just the setup for inevitable disappointment. But River wasn't like that. River was honest and present and real, and I was throwing it away because I couldn't believe I deserved it. I was so lost in my thoughts I didn't hear someone approach until a voice said, "I thought I might find you here." River was standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, looking tired and worried and somehow still patient. "How did you know?" I asked. "Your mom. She said you do this when you're upset. Come to the beach at night." He moved closer but didn't touch me. "We need to talk." "I know. You've been avoiding me for 2 weeks," he said quietly. "And I've been giving you space because I thought you needed it. But Mira told me tonight that you seemed sad at dance class, and I realized space isn't what you need." I turned back to the ocean. "I don't know what I need." "Then let me tell you what I need." He moved to stand next to me, both of us facing the water. "I need you to talk to me, to tell me what's going on in your head instead of just disappearing. Because I can handle a lot of things, but I can't handle not knowing if you're pulling away, because you want out or because you're scared." "I'm scared," I whispered. "Of what?" "Of this being too good. Of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Of finding out that I'm not actually as important to you as I think I am." The words tumbled out. "I keep waiting for you to wake up and realize you're comparing me to her, to your wife, and I'm coming up short." River was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You want to know what I think about when I think about you?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "I think about how you light up when one of your students finally nails a move. I think about the way you take your coffee with too much cream and not enough sugar. I think about how you cry at commercials but try to hide it. I think about the first time Mira hugged you and how you looked like someone gave you the greatest gift in the world." He finally turned to look at me. "I think about how you make me want to risk feeling things again. How you make me believe in futures instead of just surviving days." "But your wife—" "My wife was my wife," he said gently. Past tense. "She was a huge part of my life and I loved her. And losing her nearly destroyed me. But she's gone. And I spent 2 years existing in that loss. And then I met you. And you made me want to live again. Not instead of her. Alongside the memory of her. I don't know how to not be afraid," I admitted. "Then we figure it out together." He reached out, took my hand. "But you have to stop running from this. From us. Because I can't do this alone. I need you to be here. Actually here. Not halfway out the door waiting for it to fall apart." I turned to face him, tears streaming down my face. "What if I mess this up? Then we'll mess it up together. And we'll figure it out." He pulled me close, and I let myself lean into him. "But you have to try. Actually try. Can you do that?" I thought about Mira's question. About being present but not really there. About all the half-lived moments of my past relationship where I'd been too afraid to ask for what I wanted. About River's honesty and patience, and the way he never made me feel small. "I can try," I said. "That's all I'm asking." We stood there on the beach for a long time, holding each other while the ocean roared its approval or indifference. I couldn't tell which. Eventually, River pulled back and said, "Come on, Let's go get terrible diner food and talk this through properly. We ended up at the only 24-hour diner in town, sitting in a corner booth with plates of fries neither of us really wanted. And I told him everything. About my ex showing up, about feeling like I wasn't enough, about the woman in the grocery store and my spiral of fear. River listened to it all without interrupting, without trying to fix it, just holding space for my mess. When I finished, he said, I need to tell you something too. Okay? I've been scared too. Not of you, but of how much I care about you. Of how quickly Mira attached to you. Of what it would mean if this didn't work out. He picked at his fries. I haven't introduced her to anyone I was interested in since her mom died. You're the first, and that terrifies me. But you still chose to do it, I said. Because you were worth the risk. He met my eyes. Are you saying I'm not worth it to you? No, I said immediately. God, no, you're worth everything. That's what scares me. Then we're both scared, he said. So let's be scared together and stop pretending we're not. I reached across the table, took his hand. Okay. Together. Together, he agreed. We stayed at that diner until 3 a.m, talking through our fears and expectations and what we needed from each other. No grand declarations, no promises we couldn't keep. Just honesty and commitment to try. When he finally walked me to my car, he kissed me like it was the first time and the 1,000th time all at once. Coffee tomorrow? He asked. Coffee tomorrow, I confirmed. After that night, things got easier. Not perfect, but easier. I stopped waiting for disaster and started showing up. Really showing up. When River texted, I responded. When Mira asked if I could come to dinner, I said yes. When my brain tried to spiral into worst-case scenarios, I talked to River about it instead of letting it fester. The fall festival came, and with it the dance school's first performance. Patricia had asked if I wanted to choreograph something for the students to perform, and I'd said yes immediately, then panicked for 2 weeks straight. But the kids were excited, practicing their routine with an enthusiasm that made my heart hurt in the best way. The night of the performance, the community center was packed. My parents were there in the front row, beaming with pride. River and Phoenix sat a few rows back, Mira bouncing excitedly between them. I'd dressed the kids in simple outfits we'd found at the thrift store. Nothing fancy, but they looked perfect. As the music started and my students took their places, I felt a wave of emotion so strong it nearly knocked me over. This was mine. This program, these kids, this moment. No one had given it to me. I'd built it. The performance went beautifully. Sure, a few kids forgot their places, and there was one near collision that made the audience gasp then laugh, but it was real and joyful and everything I'd hoped for. When it ended, the applause was thunderous. Backstage, I was swarmed by excited children and proud parents. Mira fought her way through the crowd to throw her arms around my waist. We did it, she squealed. You all did it, I corrected, hugging her back. You were amazing. River appeared behind her, holding a single sunflower. This is for you, he said, handing it to me. Mira picked it out. It's not fancy, Mira said earnestly, but Dad said sometimes the simple things are the best things. I crouched down to her level. It's perfect. Thank you. Later, after everyone had left and I was helping Patricia clean up, she pulled me aside. You know, she said, when you first walked in here, you looked lost. Like you were going through the motions of living without actually being alive. That's pretty accurate, I admitted. You don't look like that anymore, she smiled. You look like someone who found what they were looking for. Walking home that night, the sunflower in one hand and River's hand in the other, Mira skipping ahead of us, I realized Patricia was right. I had found something. Not just River, not just this job, but myself. The version of me who wasn't afraid to take up space, to ask for what I wanted, to believe I deserved good things. What are you thinking about? River asked. How different everything is from a year ago. Better different? Infinitely better different. I squeezed his hand. Thank you. For what? For being patient with me. For not giving up when I was being impossible. He stopped walking, turned to face me. You were never impossible. Just scared. And you had good reason to be. I'm still scared sometimes, I admitted. Me too. He kissed my forehead. But we're doing it anyway. That's what matters. Mira called back to us. Are you guys being mushy again? Extremely mushy, River called back, making her giggle. We walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence. And when River dropped me off at my parents' house, he lingered at the door. I love you, he said quietly. I know we said we'd take things slow, and I'm not asking you to say it back. But I needed you to know. My heart felt too big for my chest. I love you too. He smiled. That soft smile that made me feel like the most important person in the world. Yeah? Yeah. I kissed him. Definitely. The months after the festival were some of the happiest of my life. The dance program grew, adding more classes and more students. Rivers Brothers restaurant opened to rave reviews. My parents settled fully into retirement, taking up hobbies and making friends. And River and I just lived. We had dinners and movie nights. We took Mira to the beach. We argued about stupid things and made up quickly. We built something real and solid and ours. One Saturday morning, River asked if I'd come with him somewhere. He was being mysterious about it, but his eyes were bright with excitement, so I agreed. We drove to an old building downtown, one I'd walked past a dozen times without really noticing. "What are we doing here?" I asked as he unlocked the door. "Phoenix and I bought this place," he said. "Or we're in the process of buying it. Anyway, the restaurant's doing well enough that we can expand." He led me inside to a large open space with high ceilings and big windows. It was empty except for dust and potential. "It's great," I said, not sure why he'd brought me here. "We were thinking about what to do with the upstairs," he continued, watching my face carefully. "And I had an idea, but I wanted to run it by you first." "Okay, what if we turned it into a proper dance studio? Not just for kids, for everyone. We could renovate it, install the right floors, put in mirrors and bars." He was talking faster now, excited. "You could run it, build your own programs, hire other instructors. Make it really yours." I stared at him. "River, I know it's a lot, and I'm not trying to fix your life or anything, but you've been talking about wanting to expand the community center program, and there's not enough space there. This could be that space." He took my hands. "But only if you want it. No pressure." I looked around the empty room and suddenly I could see it. The mirrors, the bars, students of all ages, me teaching classes, hiring instructors, building something from the ground up. Not someone else's vision, but mine. "Are you serious?" I asked. "Completely. Phoenix is on board. We've already talked to the bank. We just needed to know if you were interested." "Interested?" I laughed, and it came out slightly hysterical. "River, this is everything. So that's a yes?" I threw my arms around his neck. "That's a yes. That's absolutely a yes." We spent the next hour walking through the space. River pointing out where walls could come down, where the office could go, how we could maximize the natural light. I was overwhelmed in the best possible way. "Why are you doing this?" I asked finally. "This is a huge investment." "Because you deserve to have your dream," he said simply. "And because I believe in you. In what you're building." I kissed him there in that empty room that would become mine, ours, something real and permanent. "I love you so much." "I love you too." He pulled back, grinned. "Plus, Mira will get free dance classes, so really I'm being selfish." I laughed and shoved him playfully. We spent another hour dreaming about the space before heading back to tell Phoenix and my parents the news. The build-out took 6 months. I split my time between teaching at the community center and overseeing the studio renovation, choosing every detail from the floor material to the paint color. River and Phoenix helped when they could, and my dad spent hours doing carpentry work. It became a family project in the best way. During that time, River and I settled into something that felt like forever. Mira started calling me by my name instead of my dad's friend, which felt significant. My parents adored River and treated Mira like their own grandchild. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real and honest and mine. The studio's opening night finally arrived, and I was a nervous wreck. We'd put together a showcase featuring students from the community center, some adult dancers I'd recruited, and, at Patricia's insistence, a solo piece by me. "I haven't performed solo in years," I'd protested. "Exactly," Patricia had said. "Time to remind yourself why you fell in love with dance in the first place." So there I was, backstage in my dance clothes, heart pounding, wondering what I'd been thinking, agreeing to this. The showcase was going well, each piece better than the last. The audience was engaged, supportive, and then it was my turn. I walked onto the stage, feeling exposed and vulnerable in a way I hadn't felt in years. The music started, a piece I'd chosen specifically for this moment. It wasn't technically perfect. My lines weren't as clean as they used to be, and I stumbled once on a turn, but it was honest. Every movement told the story of the past year. The pain of being invisible, the fear of trying again, the joy of being chosen, the courage of choosing myself. When I finished, there was a beat of silence. Then the audience erupted. Not polite applause, but real enthusiasm. My parents were crying. Patricia was beaming, and River was looking at me like I'd just performed magic. Backstage afterward, I found a small wrapped box waiting for me with a note in River's handwriting. "For the woman who taught me that endings can be beginnings." Inside was a bracelet made of woven threads in every color of the rainbow. Simple, handmade. Nothing like my grandmother's silver one. It was entirely its own thing. I slipped it on my wrist, where it settled like it had always belonged there. River found me a few minutes later, Mira's hand in his. "Well?" he asked. "It's perfect," I said, showing him the bracelet. Mira helped pick the colors. I picked all of them, Mira corrected. Dad just did the boring parts. Thank you, I told her seriously. It's the best gift I've ever gotten. We walked home together. The three of us, through streets I now knew by heart, past neighbors who waved hello, toward a future that finally felt like mine. Not because someone had given it to me, but because I'd built it. With help, with love, with patience, but ultimately with my own 2 hands. River pulled me close as we walked. Happy? He asked. Happy, I confirmed. And I was. Not in the desperate, clinging way I'd been before, where happiness was something I had to earn or prove I deserved. Just happy in the quiet, steady way of someone who knows they're exactly where they're supposed to be. The studio thrived. Over the next few months, we expanded our offerings, hired 2 more instructors, and built a community of dancers of all ages and abilities. My classes were full, and I found joy in every moment of teaching. Not because it was my escape, but because it was my purpose. River and I talked about the future in concrete terms, not just vague some days, but actual plans. When his lease was up on the apartment, we started looking at houses together. Ones with yards for Mira and space for my parents to visit. We talked about marriage without the weight of expectation, just 2 people imagining their lives permanently intertwined. One evening, I sat on my parents' porch, wearing my rainbow bracelet, watching the sunset. My mom came out and sat beside me. "You look peaceful," she said. "I am." I turned the bracelet on my wrist, feeling the texture of the threads. A year ago, I didn't think I'd ever feel this way. What way? Like I belonged to myself. I smiled at her. "Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." She squeezed my hand. "You know what I'm most proud of?" "What?" "That you didn't let one bad experience make you small. You could have stayed hidden, stayed safe, but you took the risk of being yourself again." I thought about that man who'd never been my boyfriend, about the bracelet I'd given back, about all the versions of myself I'd tried to be for people who never saw me. And then I thought about River, about Mira, about my students, about the life I'd built that was entirely, authentically mine. "It was worth the risk," I said. Later that night, River texted, "Mira wants to know if you'll be at her class tomorrow." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. "Good, because we have something to ask you." The next day, after class, Mira ran up to me with the conspiratorial excitement only small children manage. "Close your eyes," she demanded. I closed them, feeling River move closer. I heard whispering, felt them shifting around me. My heart was pounding, though I wasn't entirely sure why. Then Mira said, "Okay, open." River was down on one knee, holding a simple ring that caught the light from the studio windows. Mira was bouncing beside him, barely containing her glee, her hands clasped under her chin. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was look at this man who'd been patient with my fears, who'd held space for my healing, who'd never once made me feel like I needed to be anything other than exactly who I was. "Before you say anything," River started, and his voice had that slight tremor that happens when someone's saying something that matters. "This isn't about me trying to replace what you lost or prove anything. This is about me wanting to spend my life with someone who makes every day better. Someone who loves my daughter like her own. Someone who takes risks even when they're terrified." He paused, and I saw his eyes getting wet. "Someone who taught me it's okay to be happy again. Someone who makes me believe in futures instead of just surviving." "Say yes," Mira stage whispered, tugging on my shirt. I looked at her, this little girl who'd become so precious to me, then back at River. I thought about that day in the cafe when I'd felt so lost, about the woman I'd been who accepted crumbs and called it love. I thought about every scared moment, every doubt, every time I'd almost run away from this. And I thought about how River had never asked me to be smaller or quieter or different. He'd just asked me to be here. "Yes," I said, and my voice broke on the word. "Obviously yes, 1,000 times yes." River stood and slipped the ring on my finger next to my rainbow bracelet. His hands were shaking slightly, and when he pulled me close, I felt him exhale like he'd been holding his breath for hours. Mira threw her arms around both of us, nearly knocking us over. "Now we're a real family." "We were always a real family," River told her, his voice muffled against my hair. "This just makes it official." "Can I be a flower girl?" Mira asked, already planning. "You can be whatever you want," I told her, kneeling down to her level. "You're the most important girl at this wedding." She beamed at that, then launched into an elaborate description of the dress she wanted, complete with hand gestures and sound effects. Over her head, River and I caught each other's eyes, and the look that passed between us said everything words couldn't. We stood there in the dance studio I'd built, in the town I'd chosen, with the people who'd chosen me back. And I thought about how a year ago, I'd been someone's secret, someone's maybe, someone's eventually. Now I was my own person, with my own life, choosing and being chosen in return. The wedding was small, held on the beach at sunset. Mira was our flower girl, taking her job extremely seriously. My parents cried happy tears. Phoenix gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. Patricia caught the bouquet and immediately handed it to my mom with a wink. During our first dance, River whispered, "Any regrets?" "Not a single one," I said. "Not even about that guy?" I thought about it honestly. No, because if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be me. The real me. "I like the real you," River said. "I like the real you too." We swayed together as the sun set, surrounded by people who loved us, living a life we'd built together. Later, after the reception, River, Mira, and I walked along the beach, shoes in hand, talking about the future with the easy confidence of people who trust each other completely. "Can we get a dog?" Mira asked. "Maybe," River said. "Can we paint my room purple?" "Definitely." "Can we have pancakes for dinner tomorrow?" "Absolutely." She ran ahead, chasing waves, and River pulled me close. "You know what I think about?" he asked. "What?" "That day I saw you in the cafe. How you looked so lost and I almost didn't say anything. Almost left you alone. I'm glad you didn't." "Me too." He kissed the top of my head. Best decision I ever made. I looked down at my hands, at my grandmother's rainbow bracelet and my wedding ring, symbols of different kinds of love and choice. Then I looked at River, at Mira, at the life we were building together. I'd spent so long trying to be someone worth loving that I'd forgotten to be someone worth being. But somewhere along the way, in this small coastal town with its dance studio and its honest conversations and its patient, kind man and his beautiful daughter, I'd finally learned. Love wasn't about earning your place or proving your worth. It was about showing up, being honest, and choosing each other every day. And as I stood on that beach, my bare feet in the sand, the ocean roaring its approval, I finally understood something crucial. My life hadn't started when I met River, and it hadn't ended when that other man let me go. It had been happening all along, every choice and mistake and triumph building toward this moment. I was exactly where I was supposed to be, not because someone else had put me there, but because I'd put myself there. I'd chosen this life, this love, this version of myself, and that made all the difference. The sun set, turning the sky brilliant shades of gold and red, and we walked back toward our future together. Not as someone's maybe or someone's secret, but as fully realized people choosing each other with open eyes and full hearts. And it was more than enough. It was everything.